Hello, and you're very welcome once again to Rostrevor Area Newsbite on this Wednesday, the 21st of October. First up this week, we have no club notes to go on. I suppose that's indicative of how quiet things have become, both on the field and off-field activity. Just everything has been upended this year, but having been in touch with Richie earlier on today, what we are hoping to do, if Richie's able to pull it together, is there was a club draw on for three of the new club jerseys to commemorate the partnership and link up between Abbey and Autoline Insurance. And there was a Facebook club draw request on the club Facebook page for people that were liking it and sharing it. And Richie is proposing to do that draw live on the show here next Wednesday night. So I'm hoping that there's no technical issues that'll prevent us from doing that. But anyway, Richie, thanks for your contributions every week, and we look forward to getting you back on the show next week. Now, moving straight on then, wee bit of good news this week. Much loved and respected man within our community and a very active member of the community, even at 93 years of age. And last Sunday was a time and a cause of great celebration for the wonderful Canon Jemson, who is pictured here with his lovely wife Sheila. And last Sunday, Canon Jemson celebrated 70 years of his ordination. He is quite simply an incredible man, and it's good to see him still taking an active role within the Church of Ireland and in our community. He's been heavily involved in a lot of things over the years and has never been afraid to get the sleeves rolled up and get stuck in himself. So my personal very best wishes to Canon Jemson on reaching such a remarkable milestone, and I'm sure those best wishes would certainly be reflected throughout the community. So good luck in the time ahead. And then staying with ecumenical matters, we've just dealt with the Church of Ireland there at the bottom of the hill. At the top of the hill, last weekend we talked about Father Kieran's departure, and it's only but right that I now welcome Father Des Mooney into our parish. Father Des took up his position as parish priest and celebrated his first service last Saturday night. So no doubt he'll fit seamlessly into our community, and I look forward to working with him in the time ahead. Now, I suppose it's hard to avoid any week where we're not talking about COVID-related matters and cancellations of events. I think I touched on it briefly last week. The Halloween events, of course, have caused we've had to cancel for this year for obvious reasons. And I've just noticed during the week there that Billy Graham's annual literary festival that normally this year was scheduled to run on the 20th of November. The 5th annual literary festival has also fallen foul to this health pandemic. So it will be back bigger and better, no doubt, next year. And I just wish Billy all the best with planning that for the future. He's it's brought another that literary festival has definitely brought another element of tourism and sort of an extended nearly tourism weekend into the autumn within the village. Very well received, and he's had some literary giants partake in that festival in the previous number of years. So moving on then, and I'm hoping to be joined this evening by local resident dear friend and the medical man himself, Dr. Liam Farrell. And I hope I can get Dr. Liam on the line here before we move on. And so there he appears. Dr. Liam, it's good to see you.
Jarlath, the honour is all mine.
Right, okay. Liam, it's hard to believe it's 7 months from you and I sort of done a wee thing in relation to COVID. The evenings were brighter. There was a wee bit more heat in the air. And, you know, we sort of had no idea what was coming at us. And it's fair to say that because of the measures that were put in place and the discipline of people listening to the advice and people adhering to the mitigation measures and the lockdown measures, we locally escaped relatively unscathed. Now, fast forward 7 months, and I have to tell you on a personal level, Liam, I find this quite difficult, a quite difficult subject to talk about, because everyone knows now there's been quite a substantial spike within our own village of Rostrevor. But these are all our friends and neighbours. And that's why it actually makes me uncomfortable. But at the same time, it's probably an issue that we have to address. And I'm sure you will join me, first of all, in wishing everybody that has succumbed to this thing the very best wishes, that they will make a full and speedy recovery, and know that their community is with them on this. So, Liam, I wanted to get you on here this evening, pretty much to give me your view on what has happened. How have we got to this point, considering that we were relatively free in the earlier spring, and we've just been hit by a tsunami here in the past couple of weeks, and where we're likely to proceed to over the coming weeks and months?
Well, we were very fortunate initially, Jarlath. I think because Rostrevor is a small community, because the lockdown was pretty well observed at the time, and because Ireland is an island, we were protected a bit. But there's a couple of things you have to remember. This is a new disease for which we have no cure, we have no immunity, and we have no vaccine. And we're probably not going to have a vaccine to, I think, would be very fortunate to have one by this time next year, and be very fortunate. And who knows even then how effective it's going to be, or whether it's going to give long-lasting immunity. You know, the science of vaccines is very complex and takes a long time. And at the moment, they're really essentially doing lab tests. They can test for the individual bodily responses to the vaccine. But what they can't do is try it out in a population basis to know whether it's going to work or not. Now, I have heard a number of locals who have tested positive for COVID. Now, the bright side is that most of us, especially younger people, will get better without any significant long-term effects. But for older people and for those with pre-existing conditions, it can be a very serious illness. And even for younger people, it can sometimes be very serious. And you have to remember the death rate, I suppose, 1 to 2%, perhaps less. It doesn't sound when you say 1 to 2%, but when you think that means 1 or 2 out of every 100 people in Rostrevor who gets it might die with it, it brings home how serious it is. Now, as you pointed out, the mitigation is all important. We have to all buy into it. We have to wash our hands regularly. We have to practice social distancing. And we have to wear a mask in social situations, in shops, in public transport, anywhere, especially where you're indoors in any kind of crowd. Now, initially, as I said, it was possibly less important because the virus had not reached Rostrevor, but it's here now. So we have to be really scrupulous, and we have to look after each other. young people might be safe, but every young person has a father at home or grandmother at home, and elderly friends, and they're all at much more significant risk. Now, I think one of the priorities is schools. Schools have to be open. Children need to be educated, and everything really that we do is secondary to get the children back to school. Whatever we have to close, hospitality, etc., bars, restaurants, we need to get the children back to school.
Yeah, I mean, like, I suppose that was one of the things, Liam, that really jumped out at me this time. There seemed to be unanimous consensus that the schools were not going to close certainly for a long period. But I just want you to touch on something. As you did mention it briefly there, that young people are less likely to be affected from this and are more likely to be asymptomatic, right? But could you clear something up for me? Someone who is asymptomatic but is a positive case, are they every bit as lethal as for passing that on to someone who has the full range of symptoms? Have they got the same capacity to pass that virus on to someone else as someone who has the full range of symptoms?
It's strange to see it after all this time, but as yet that is at the moment unclear. But the evidence would suggest at the moment that asymptomatic carriers are just as likely to carry it and to pass it on as somebody who is exhibiting symptoms. So that's why everybody needs to behave as though they're carrying it. You and I have to, when you and I are walking down the street, we have to imagine that we are carrying it, that the person walking past us is carrying it. That's why social distancing is so important. Wearing masks is so important. I said it doesn't just protect us; it protects other people from us.
Yeah, I did actually hear you speak on that a while back, where you were suggesting that people really have to discipline themselves and take the approach that every person they meet have a working assumption that they have it, and that's the best way to avoid spreading it, or indeed picking it up, if everyone was to adopt that approach. So there's been a bit of a fall down, Liam, on, I mean, like, I've been thinking about this a couple of days, and it's happened in the Republic first, and it seems to be filtering in here now as well, where for months we were told by the people who took to the podiums, whose job I do not envy, by the way, but the people that took to the podiums were telling us we follow the health guidelines, we follow the science, but increasingly we're starting to see chinks in that armor, and the economy is very much being factored in now to decisions that are being made. You did mention there about the importance of keeping the schools open, but wider society, businesses, and so on and so forth, where do you see this? What way do you see this playing out when we get over this initial couple of weeks and into the end of November and beyond? How do you see this playing out in relation to businesses and so on?
Well, if we can get the infection rate down, what they call the R rate, if we can get that under 1%, under one again.
Yeah.
I think there's every chance that some kind of graded opening might be able. But the problem is, once the R rate gets over 1, it's almost what they call an exponential growth. One person will infect 2 people, who'll infect 4 people, who'll infect 8 people, and you're dealing with a very low number of cases until suddenly you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of cases for which we don't have the capacity to treat. Now, there are a couple of things. First of all, we're much better at treating COVID now than we were at the start. That's why fewer patients need ventilation. We're more aware of the benefits of medications like, for example, dexamethasone. I mean, a lot of the stuff we're hearing from America, Trump and his chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine, the other medication he was on, remdesivir, there's minimal evidence that either of those are any effect. But dexamethasone, which has a medication that has been used for decades, it's a very, very simple, cheap steroid. There's a lot of clinical experience. Doctors are very familiar with using it, know how to use it safely. So the treatments are better. But as I mentioned before, death is only a very crude measure. There are lots of people who will get what they call long COVID, and we don't know yet, because the disease is so new, we don't know how many get long COVID, which is prolonged exhaustion, tiredness, loss of taste and smell, persistent muscle pains. I said at this stage, the science is very fuzzy, and we do not know how many people will get it, but we do know that a substantial number of people will get it, and young people as well.
Yeah. The really since the springtime, since this thing first visited us earlier in the year, the local businesses have really went out of their way to put the mitigation measures in place, and everybody has adapted and adjusted. So it very much is up to us now as individuals, and the actions that we undertake that will determine whether our own village here gets on top of this and gets a grip of this. But the importance, Liam, I just want you to reiterate again the importance of the masks, the importance of social distancing, curtailing social interaction, on washing hands. You just can't double down enough on those simple instructions. Would you agree?
Yeah, it is very important that we try and stay within our own household and make have as few contacts with people outside our household as possible, and try and stay almost within a bubble. Just when you're on it, I actually would like to pay tribute to the local businesses, and especially the local shops, on the service they've given to our community during this time. And it does emphasize the importance of community. And I hope that when eventually when this is over, I hope people remember how good the local shops were and what the service they provided for us when we needed it. Now, let me just say, we don't know how long this pandemic is going to continue. We could be looking at years. We could be looking at a virus which changes its nature, so whatever vaccine we introduce doesn't give immunity. We don't yet know whether if you have had the coronavirus and you've got better from it, we don't know whether that gives you prolonged immunity. There are just so many things we do not know. Mm-hmm. But what we do know is that if you practice social distancing, if you wash your hands regularly, if you wear a mask in social situations, and if you stay within your bubble and also try and regard everybody else as having COVID and yourself as having it as well, that way we may get through it quicker than otherwise.
Well, Liam, listen, that's a very sobering an honest assessment that you've given there, but you're a man that is obviously held in the highest regard locally, and people do and will listen to your advice, that I hope. So can I just thank you very, very much for joining us here this evening, and hopefully the next time we meet up again, if it's another 6 or 7 months on this forum here, that the news is much better, and the sun is high in the sky again. So yeah. We'll leave it at that, Liam. And thanks very much, Liam.
Happy days will come again, Jarlath.
Happy days. All right. See you soon.
Cheers. Thanks, Jarlath.
Bye-bye. So my thanks are to Dr. Liam Farrell during what is a very scary and worrying time within this village. But I once again want to restate my hope that people that have been affected by this and their families all make a full and speedy recovery. And you're not alone in this. You're not alone in this journey. We are a community. We're a very close community, and we all will go out of our way to help those that have been afflicted by this serious pandemic. But please don't be behind a closed door and going without. Just lift the phone, send a Facebook message, and there's any amount of people within this village will drop everything to go and help those that are in need. And Cathal has just reminded me there that Dr. Liam, of course, is not only a medical man, he's also a highly regarded author, and there indeed was his last publication, "Are You the Bleeping Doctor?" and a very, very well received and funny book about Liam's career. Now, that's it on the COVID. So, just the only other thing I want to land on this week is a few birthday wishes coming up for the week ahead. So, today, the 21st, is my own daughter Aoife's birthday. So, a very, very happy 19th birthday to our Aoife. And then coming up within the next week, on the 22nd of October, we've got Paddy Wobbly Morgan. Happy birthday to you, Paddy. On the 23rd of October, we've got Louise Doyle. On the 24th, we've Gareth Clark from Clark's Shop. And we've Don McGee up there in Lower Knockbarra. A very happy birthday to you, Don, on the 24th. Coming up on the 25th, we have Karen Hughes. And on the 26th, we have the one and only Dominic Amigo Tinley. So a very happy birthday to Dominic and everybody else in the week ahead. So that's it this week from Rostrevor Area Newsbite. And once again, anybody wants anything mentioned on the show next week, please feel free to message me or contact me in any other way, and I would gladly give it a mention. All right, bye.